This is a conversation with Jay Alderton, an athlete, bodybuilder, author, business owner, and teacher. Focusing on the brain, the body, and business. He has the world record for the fastest time to ascend the height of Everest by box jump, and many other physical and life accomplishments to go with it. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by me. Please leave a review on the podcast and go to joshterryplays.com/links to explore what I'm up to. Let's start with a little bit of background. Where did you start getting into what you're doing now with the bodybuilding and building out the business and everything?
I think if we're to go back, I think it was back in 2012. I was in the British Army for 7 years, and I'd always looked at the British Army as a stepping stone onto something else. I never looked at it as a career choice, and I always said I'd leave when I stopped enjoying it. And I got to the thing about the British Army, you have to give them a year's notice to leave. So you pretty much got to make your decision that you're going. Although I'd made my decision, I didn't know what I was going to do afterwards. And for a period of time, I was working in IT. I then got an amazing opportunity because of my security clearance to work in Baghdad, Iraq. And I didn't know what the actual job was until I got out there, but it was actually working in psychological operations for the US government. So it was a very fascinating job. I was out in Iraq for a year. I'd already been out there as a soldier, but it was actually really good to be out as a civilian. I then moved to another project for the UN in Kenya and Somalia, working with them. And then I got made redundant. And I never knew what I really wanted to do until really that point. And I think it was that point that I decided to write some things down and ask myself, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And the things I wrote down was, I enjoy helping people, I enjoy training, I enjoy physical fitness. You should be a personal trainer. Now, the reason that I didn't decide to do that before was I didn't really want to turn a passion into a career because I was really worried about resenting something that I loved. And that was kind of a big mistake, because the minute that I decided to go into personal training was the minute that my life changed. One problem that I did have was I didn't have any money. I'd literally just bought a house with my wife and put all of our savings into it. So I was pretty much skint, shall we say, us in the UK, broke. And I had £800 to my name, but I did have a credit card. And I put about £16,000, which is about $25,000 on it. Rented a studio about 7 miles away, borrowed my dad's bike to get up to that studio, and cycled up there every day to start my business. This was 2012. 3 years later, I became one of the most well-known fitness influencers, should we say, in the UK. Built a dream gym facility, had that for 3 years up until 2016. Closed that down, moved everything online, and I very much focus my energies now in 3 areas: body, brain, and business, because there's a lot of commonalities between the three of them. And it's, anything involving those three are what I'm incredibly passionate about.
Right before we started this, you said one of the cool things about shooting from the hip is you don't know what'll happen. And there's a bunch of threads out of what you just said that I want to pull on. There's so many directions we can go. I love it. When you mentioned the military, you said you had the idea that when you didn't like what you were going to do, when you didn't like what you were doing, you were going to do something else. I think that's a really interesting point, because I've noticed that some people seem to succeed at that, and then others don't. I didn't. I failed at that. That was something that I told myself. And some of the, I worked as a music teacher for a long time, and that didn't end up being like what I should have been doing for that long, right? And I waited longer than I should have, and that was in my mind. But I didn't, pull the trigger on switching careers or doing something else for much longer than I should have. And I'm curious if when you got to a point where it was time to make a change, did you feel a pull back to hesitate, or did you feel like that was just confirmation of what you were thinking all along? Was that a difficult point for you?
There was this moment because with the military, they very much try and keep you in by having you kind of at 8-year point, 12-year point, 18-year point, and 22-year point, where they incentivize you to stay. And most soldiers, they say, I was at my kind of 7-year point. Most soldiers say, well, I'll wait till I get to my 8-year point, and then I'll make a decision there. The trouble that you have with that is when you get to your 8-year point, you're only 3 years away from your half pension or your half a year before retirement. So then people kind of say, well, I've put 12 years in now, I'll just keep going. And I really had to ask myself that, do I want to do this for the rest of my life, or do I want to do something else? And it was this kind of decision that I don't want to wait to find out, because a year is a long time, and having to give a year's notice means that I needed to plan ahead, and I'd rather make the decision now and then have that year to focus on what to do next, than have to wait a year and then make that decision and it suddenly being 2. So I just had to make that decision now, and it was just a case of going, right, it's done. The decision has been made, and I'm going to go with it, and have the stubbornness to see it through. And I think that's one of the things that I found with myself over the years, is that I'm very kind of stubborn once I've made that decision, be it right or be it wrong. And that has helped me in certain areas and hindered me in others.
Also, what you said was very clear. Do you think, and I'm biased, I do think this, do you think that people make things more complicated so that it's harder?
Definitely. And it depends on a person's personality, I think. I work with a lot of personal trainers, fitness professionals, and one of the things that kind of halts them is this perfection. They wait for the perfect time for something to happen, or at least they create it in their head that when the stars align and this magical day happens, then I'll make that decision. And I think a lot of it is a safety net for people to say that, I'm not ready to make that decision. Not actually knowing that you're never going to be ready. And you need to make that decision. And for myself, it's just a case of simplifying a very complex thinking, which a lot of people have, because it's not really making the decision, it's getting over the fear of uncertainty.
Yeah, I've been making some progress in that area of my life lately, and it's been a tricky one for me. I'm definitely a perfectionist. I definitely overcomplicate things. And for me, it's been a matter of time scale. Since I was very young, I was always obsessed with the future. You hear the expression like, oh, when I was a youngster, I never thought I was going to die. Like, I was the child that was like walking around going, we're all going to pass away someday. Like, from a very young age, I was like aware of time. And I think from that, I sort of took on like an oppressively long time scale, and the goals that would come with that would be oppressive as well. And I've been shortening things more and more and more until I'm like, okay, can I have a good day, right? And it's and I'm doing this with the assumption that that my basic theory behind it is, if I'm functional, I'll naturally go towards the big goal because I'm wired for it already. Like, that's in the bag. I guess some people aren't wired that way. That doesn't work for them. But like for me, it's been like a constant battle to shorten my time scale, to make my projects smaller. I mean, TikTok itself, I would say, is an example of that, where TikTok enabled me to create the things that I'm creating. I'd say, like, it was, I had those thoughts, I had those things that I do, but the fact that it was such a short period of time actually made me do better work because it was a manageable project. And when things are so big, you know, I will turn it into that complicated mess.
It's that Parkinson's law: a task will take as long as the time in which you give it. And I think to, and this is something that I work with actually my videographer, because he is very much a perfectionist. He will probably spend 3 hours trying to find the perfect track and beat to a video, because for him that is his art. When in actual fact, what I'm trying to teach him is, just because you spent that extra time on it doesn't mean it's going to be any better for the market and what its intended goal is for. And it's this kind of law of diminishing returns, which I'm saying to him that, yes, okay, there are certain projects which need that kind of time because it's your art and it's not really about time, it's about creating things. But then when it comes to content, it's about quantity over quality. And one of the main reasons that I found that is because you don't know what is going to resonate with somebody and what's not. You know, I've spent hours on videos before and they've got hardly any views, and I've spent minutes on videos and they've got millions of views. So that has kind of led me to just focus on quantity and getting it out there. And actually what tends to happen is when you produce more quantity, the quality increases and it gets better. And actually, you know, if you're only posting sort of once every 7 days because you're concerned about it not looking good, you're never going to make it any better. And, you know, I think when it comes to having a consistent plan of action with social media, that kind of plans out because actually you notice that through your insights and analytics. And it kind of solidifies that. So it does make it easier by producing that, because you know, you say to yourself, wow, that's got hundreds of thousands of views and I didn't spend that long on it. So it kind of reinforces that narrative of, you know, done is better than perfect.
Yeah, and I always come back to the phrase, this for me, it's convinced my perfectionist mind, and I found it like a helpful frame, is the frame of quantity enables quality, because it's a lot of perfectionists, I've noticed, will get turned off by, you know, I don't know, the hustle mindset and the people that tend to shout, make lots of stuff, right? They'll have a reaction to it that's really difficult, because they're like, I want to make something really good, and it's like fair, right? You know, it's like it's understandable desire, but we have this thing where we go and we think that the practice is not actually making the thing. We go in and do preparatory practice, and then we try to go make something perfect, and then go back and do preparatory practice. That's the perfectionist. But to actually just get in the game and be consistently making is the ultimate practice. So what I'm now more and more telling myself and telling other perfectionists is, hey, it's not because like you need to not make cool stuff. It's because this will enable you to make cool stuff. And then one other thing about it is, like, it's a hard pill to swallow too, right? Because it's like, part of it is you have to accept, hey, you don't know what the free market of human desire wants. Like, you're not that good. Like, you might have an inclination, but like, I don't know. We want to be. I think it's going into like being right all the time.
And yet the most powerful thing is to say, I don't know the answer to that, or I was wrong. And actually you know, that's what we, especially when it comes to connecting people on social media, you know, I have this kind of statement that, you know, if Superman was perfect, you wouldn't like him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he becomes unrelatable. And this is why he has kryptonite. And this is why most superheroes are created with flaws.
Yes.
So we can connect with them, so we can understand them better. Because if shit was perfect with them, then we just wouldn't connect with them like we do.
Yes, and this connects to something I wanted to chat with you about, which is the conversation of self-worth. Because being able to say that you're wrong is a weird thing, where to do it is something that, you know, tends to, it makes you feel bad for a while, at least at the beginning. Eventually you can get to a point where it's even delightful, you know, if you're, you know, getting Zen master level. But the path to get there, I think, requires some development of self-worth, because if you're saying I was wrong and your self-worth is dependent on that, right? If your self-worth is dependent on, say, being right, you know, you're screwed. Wait, no, I cuss on this podcast. You're fucked. I just wanted to open that up, also because I came across another podcast, I believe of yours, where you were talking about bodybuilding and image, and you kind of went through a journey there, of like learning to reframe your self-worth, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons that people are afraid to say that they're wrong is because they've attached their identity to their self-worth. So I reference very much bodybuilding. Something that I've mentioned before is that there are 3 different levels of motivation when it comes to change. There is an intellectual level. We know that smoking is bad for our health, but we still smoke. So at an intellectual level, it's not enough motivation to change. The next level is emotional. I had a client who weighed 400 pounds, and he was on a flight and he couldn't sit down because he was too big. And that one situation enabled him to lose 200 pounds, because it suddenly dawned on him that this needs to stop. And it was that emotional connection to what he was doing that caused him to change. But the trouble with certain things like that is that they're not always powerful enough for people to change or to do something. And when we identify with our habits, when we identify, you know, we are no longer Josh who goes to the gym. We are Josh the bodybuilder. You know, we are known by our friends as that, you know, the gym guy or the runner or the keto person or the vegetarian or the vegan.
I'm the steak guy now. Because I'm currently carnivore.
Yeah, but when we identify with these, when we say we're wrong, it's not just about changing our decisions, it's about changing our lives, because now we can no longer identify with what we used to believe. And that is much harder to change as an individual, your entire identity, than it is your opinion.
So what do you identify with?
I think one of the most important things to identify, and I think as well, I remember listening to someone talk about how you praise children. And it's not praising children for winning. It's not praising children for what they achieve. It's praising children for their attitude, their values, and what they find meaningful. And of course, what we find meaningful is integrity. What we find meaningful is kindness. What we find meaningful is, you know, strength and vulnerability. And actually, when you identify with those attributes, that kind of empowers you more. because it's less, these things enable you to be wrong, enable you to open up more, enable you to change your mind rather than actual individual things. So when you are praising a child for their effort rather for their achievements, then they very much hone in on actually, that hard work, that persistence, that integrity that actually causes them the actual success.
I believe that you and I have a book that we both really like. Mindset, Carol Dweck.
Yes.
Yeah, could you just like give a quick summary of that? I think it's great.
Yeah, so it kind of adds to what I was talking about here, where Carol Dweck talks about two different kinds of mindset. She talks about a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And a lot about the fixed mindset is, this is who I am as a person, and if I don't succeed with being as I am, I can't change. And actually, this causes a lot of envy, this causes a lot of jealousy and frustration in people, because they believe that their talents are fixed. They can't get better. They're born with this ability, and if it's not good enough, there's nothing they can do about it. Whereas a growth mindset comes to the understanding that a person can start off in life being stupid, being unfit, being lacking in self-confidence and self-worth. But that individual understands that these things can be developed, these things can grow, and these things can improve, and these things can change. And actually, the reason that I love, associating bodybuilding with the brain is that, in order to strengthen your brain, you need to take it through the sets and reps. And actually, it does become stronger, it does become more developed, and it does grow over time. And I always look back and laugh, because I was that individual at school who failed all of his kind of academics, struggled through college, and only actually joined the army at 17 because there was probably only two choices for me. There was join the military, or in the next year I'm probably going to go to prison because I have no direction. And I say that to so many people all the time, because regardless of what I achieve, I say, look, anybody can do this. I'm nothing special. This just takes persistence, discipline, and hard work. And people want the quick answer for that. A lot of people say to me with social media, how do you build such a big social media following? I'm like, well, Instagram, I turned up every day for the last 9 years. People say to me, how did I, build a decent physique? I was like, well, I started training with weights at 13 years of age, and 23 years later, here we are. And I love that, because it just goes to show that good things take time, and you should want good things to take time, because if something's given to you on a plate, something that I say to people all the time is, if I gave you the body of your dreams, it wouldn't last very long, because A, you didn't know how you got it, and B, you don't know how to maintain it, so you won't keep it. And I think that's so important with everything in life. I think Jim Rohn said a quote is that everybody should strive to become a millionaire, not for their money, but for the kind of person that you need to become to get there. And I love that, because that millionaire could be changed with anything that you are striving to succeed in life.
Would you say that self-worth is actionable? The place to put self-worth would be actionable things under your control? Definitely.
I think Stoicism teaches us that you must control the things that you can control and let go of the things that you can't. And for most people in the world, there are things that we can control and are within our control. And it's what we put in our mouths and how much we move our feet. And although it is difficult, although I have simplified it, when you understand that all of these things are within your control, and you just need to make these decisions and know that it's difficult to do, and really start to understand what discipline is about. And this is something that really, I think, really changed my mind with a lot of things, is that very much the military teaches you about discipline, but I didn't actually know what discipline was until I left the army. And I kind of understood it much better as I got older. And I had a quote that, motivation is doing things when you feel like doing it, and discipline is doing things regardless of how you feel. And actually what we need to do is think about the things that we need to do on a daily basis that we don't necessarily want to do, and focus on doing those. And this sounds very kind of common sense and simple, and I think what people say is that common sense isn't common practice, because it's not. Something that I have conditioned myself to do on a daily basis is, what things do I need to do today that I don't want to do, and go and do them, and actually shut that mind off to go and do it. My own thing that I practice on a daily basis is going into the sea every single morning, every single day. And that's something that I've been doing for the last 2 years, and I've done it every day for the last kind of 15 months now. And that has taught me so many lessons about discipline, because out of that 15 months, I could probably cherry pick 5 days where I actually wanted to do it.
I was a workaholic when I was 20. And I thought I was disciplined. And it's so easy to believe that. It's so easy. Because I worked. I was workaholic. It really took me apart. But by the time I was done with that phase, I was flattened. And I think about discipline very differently now than I used to. And it is doing things that we don't want to do. But it's funny how I think sometimes we play tricks with our minds of what we actually don't want to do, what that is. I find myself wanting to speak to a certain subset of people a lot that I think that I don't think that they're getting spoken to, which is, I think there's a lot of people that are utterly passionate and full of dreams, and they want to do great things, and they're just burning the hell out, and their lives are in shambles. And whenever I think about this, my mind always goes back to an analogy of a child going to get cookies out of a cookie jar. So let's say there's a cookie jar on top of a refrigerator, and the child's not supposed to get the cookies, but there's nobody home, so the child goes and gets a chair, puts it by the refrigerator, and then goes and finds a stack of books, puts those on top of the chair, and then maybe a leftover Amazon box somewhere, puts that on top of the books, crawls up all that, gets on the counter, and then reaches down to grab the Amazon box, puts that on the counter, steps on the Amazon box, reaches up, gets the cookie. At no point in that scenario was that child using discipline. That child was following their desire. And that's an amazing thing, right? That's quite an accomplishment. The child had to go, 3 times its height or something, to make all of that happen. And when I think about these people, me included, that want to do good for the world and want to create something and have a burning desire to go do. That's the cookie jar. We want to do that shit. And the discipline is to take a fucking bubble bath. The discipline is, yeah, like you said, to go in the ocean. The discipline is to do these, like, to wash your clothes, to do utterly mundane things. And I feel really strongly that that is the case.
I think I refer back to one of your videos, Josh, about compound interest. And it's how mind-boggling things grow when you do something small often. And when you wait enough time, then it compounds. I say this to people all the time, and that's to be like bamboo. And this analogy is basically, and whether it's true or not, as with any of these analogies, you know, we'll leave that for people to decide. But the basics of it is, when you plant bamboo, it takes 3 years to do anything out of the ground. You can water it every day, and you're not going to see much happen. And then that third year, suddenly it sprouts out the ground, and there are certain species of bamboo that can grow up to 90 feet in 6 weeks. You know, some species of bamboo are the fastest growing plants. And when you look back at that, it wasn't that it wasn't doing anything for 3 years. It's the fact that it was building an incredibly solid foundation so it could cope with its exponential growth. So whenever I'm doing something and I'm expecting it to grow exponentially, quickly, I kind of remind myself of that and think, well, you know, if that came out of the ground in just a couple of months, it's only going to topple over because you just can't deal with it. It comes down to any kind of success because you just literally cannot cope. I can deal with so much more now in my business and in my life because I've broken myself over the last 5 years. I have fucked up. I have made so many mistakes. I've done so many things wrong. And if anybody was to kind of ask me, would I do it all again? I'd say yes, because these things I'm doing are building those foundations. So no matter when I grow, and any kind of success isn't, you know, growing 90 feet in 6 weeks. I find any kind of success is defined by the individual, but it is a lifelong pursuit. And I always say to myself, you know, anything that you're doing, just be like bamboo. You know, be patient for those 2 or 3 years, turn up every day, water the plant, and just be patient.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, I mean, you have had a lot of success in social media. Has that, how has that been, I'm trying to not ask the question, how did you get success on social media? But how did you relate to social media? How did you deal with it, right? Because it's a strange beast.
I think when I first started was 2011. I had one of the biggest pages on Facebook. It was 10,000 likes, I believe. That was when pages first came out on Facebook. And I very much used, back then, I was really into my bodybuilding, really into my fitness and training. And I used social media as an accountability tool. And I remember the first thing that I did, it was putting up some of my workouts on my Facebook page in the knowledge that I knew that there was a couple of guys that followed me in the gym. So if I wasn't doing the workouts that I'd just put on my page, they would realize I'm full of shit. And actually what that enabled me to do is train harder because I had that accountability there. I've done some pretty crazy shit over the years with charity events, endurance events, book writing, the lot. And most of the time, those things have started with a post. an accountability post to say, I am going to do that. And so, yeah, social media for me has very much been about accountability and documentation. And then it's become a lot easier to show up every day. It's very much changed over the last year or so, but up until, I would say, really 2019, I very much used it as an accountability tool. And whenever I have, I've never struggled to be consistent with social media. I haven't really struggled with social media being consistent because it is an inbuilt habit now after doing it for a decade now. But but it was very much living my life through kind of an accountability, doing kind of day in the life videos. And my first hire in my business in 2015 was a videographer because I knew I needed to get better at video. And what better way at getting better at video than hiring a videographer that knocks on your door at 9 a.m. wanting to film stuff, and then having to find the money to pay for his wage. So that really changed the game for me with social media.
Have there been challenges, emotional struggles in that arena, or does it feel like just business there?
I think
is there a comfortable detachment?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I had to break in order to grow from it. Up until 2016, I was very much 7 days a week person. I was very much team no sleep, only getting kind of 4 hours sleep, building my dreams. And 2016 was a massive turning point for me because I got to the end of the year. I'd built my dream gym facility. I had the #1 podcast in the UK. I just broke a world record pushing a sled, I think it was about 310-pound sled for 24 hours straight for 25 kilometers, and I raised about £10,000 for charity. And I also wrote a book which became a bestseller in 8 minutes. 8 hours. I wish it was 8 minutes. 8 hours it was.
That works.
That would be nice, 8 minutes. But I got to December, and for a week I was floating on a cloud. I'd probably ticked every life box that I wanted to tick. And then a massive black void came over me. And I actually broke up from my wife, moved out, and just felt lost for 3 months because I didn't actually know what I was doing it all for. And something that I realized was that, I was very good at ticking boxes, at achieving things, but I was terrible at switching off, terrible of, relaxing, and terrible of connecting with people. Because that entire year I was very robotic. I was very kind of less emotional, very stoic, very intellectualizing everything. And 2017 was a year where I had to change all that. I have a thing called very simple thing called a meltdown management scale. And it focuses your life on 4 things. And the way I kind of look at this is 4 legs on a stool. If one is unbalanced, it's noticeable because the stool becomes wobbly. And it is health, wealth, productivity, and connectivity. And it's a simple process of rating yourself each day between 1 to 5. 1 being terrible, 5 being awesome. And had I done that in 2016, I would have found that my wealth and productivity were a 5. My physical health was probably a 4. I would say my mental health was probably, deep down a 3. But my connectivity was a 1. And I find that with most people, that when they do that simple process, that when they're usually pretty high in 2 of the 4, they're usually pretty low in 1 of them. When someone is usually very high in productivity, they're very low in connectivity. When they're very high in wealth, they're usually very low in health. And I think it's understanding that you need a balance of all 4 if you want to play this game at a high level for a long time. So that was a massive game changer for me. And something that I kind of learned from that, and it's very much what they talk about in Stoicism, about finding the mean, finding the middle, finding the balance. And it's understanding that you can achieve things in both extremes, but only for a short period of time. You know, when we look at selfishness and selflessness as one thing on a scale, you can achieve great things being completely selfless and putting others first. You can achieve great things being completely selfish and focusing on yourself. But they both come with sacrifices, because when you're very selfless and helping other people, you don't help yourself. And when you put others before yourself, there's only a matter of time before you can't look after yourself anymore. When you're extremely selfish and put yourself first, such as being a bodybuilder, you have to be extremely selfish because you've got to look after yourself first. You can achieve great things. You know, a lot of athletes, gold medal athletes, you know, they have to prioritize their own training, sleep and recovery for the gold medal. But it comes at the sacrifice of not connecting with people, not taking some time off, and actually not focusing on other people's needs. So for me, I actually went from being extremely selfish, as in, you know, focusing on my own wants and needs, to building my gym facility and business and putting others before myself. You know, I'd spend 4 or 5 hours responding to messages, emails, doing voice notes to people, jumping on the phone with people, and giving everybody my energy, but not giving my family my energy and not giving myself my energy. And in order to solve that, I just basically needed to tell everyone to fuck off for 6 months. Not responding to messages, not responding to emails, not getting back to people, and actually saying no. And it felt incredible. And I think this is the most important thing about protecting your energy. It's incredibly important. I look at it as a mobile phone now. If you wanted your mobile phone its battery to last for the entire day, then you turn off the Bluetooth, you turn off the Wi-Fi, you reduce the brightness, and it lasts longer. And when you look at a human being like that, it's like, what things do you need to switch off in order to prolong your energy? And it is news feeds, Twitter, negative people that drain you, people that want your time, and knowing, you know, where to say no and where you need to conserve your energy and where you need to focus your energy as well. And I think that is so important, because it's not about how long it takes to do something, which I learned. You know, a Jamie who's only slept for 4 hours, you know, is very different to a Jamie that slept 8, because a Jamie who slept 8 can do more in the time that he's up than twice as much as
my productivity has really increased lately, which, due to my past, I'm of course trying to watch very carefully. I don't want to let that run wild, and it has been, in a large degree, very large, to protecting myself, to setting those boundaries that you describe, of limiting the unnecessary output in places where it doesn't benefit me. I do need to work on the connectivity. That is definitely a thing that I need to continue to move towards. But yeah, it's amazing what happens when you don't. I don't even want to say expend yourself unnecessarily. When you notice where you're expending yourself, it's incredible the results that start to happen. Just even when you just start to notice it. The thing you said about compound growth, and the starting. I'm starting something new. I'm doing a podcast. Do you have any advice for somebody at the beginning of the podcast journey?
I think one of the most important things, and I've heard this a lot, is kind of commit to 100 with anything. That's 100 days, 100 episodes, 100 pieces of content. Because then and only then you're going to discover 2 things. Really, whether that is what it is that you want to do, and 2, it's gonna give you enough time to build the habit up to do it. I've done lots of podcasts over the years. Most of the time, my first podcast, I committed for a year of doing it, and it's so important to have like non-negotiable processes in there to make sure that you succeed with it. So when it comes to podcasts, it's essentially knowing. I think for myself, my podcast was initially guest-based, and one of the main panics with it was always trying to find enough guests to come on. And I had a guest cancel, and I did the podcast myself, and it happened to be the most viewed podcast. So actually, what it made me realize was, okay, cool. So I don't need guests, and actually what that might work out is a lot more beneficial because I'm not relying on other people for its success. So it's knowing what style to use, being consistent with it, and I think, as with anyone, having it as a passion project, not a profit project. A lot of people do things because they see people on YouTube with millions of views earning lots of ad revenue, so they decide to do YouTube. People do podcasts because they see Joe Rogan's just got a $100 million deal on Spotify, so they decide to do podcasts. And that's not why you should be doing certain things. A lot of people will speak to me about TikTok because actually I don't do anything. It's not a business platform for me at all. I don't sell anything. I don't really, I do one or two things for sponsors, but it's a passion project. It's something that I've decided to commit to do and not expecting a result from it. And actually what that has enabled me to do is be consistent with a platform, going on almost 2 years now, and building the biggest following that I've had on social media because of it. But when I look back to all of my social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, they were passion projects. They were stuff that I actually enjoyed doing. And a lot of YouTubers that I speak to have got millions of views, millions of subscribers now. They got into YouTube because they enjoyed making videos. And the causation of turning up every day and doing the work for many years is that success. So enjoyment is definitely the key to consistency for long term, especially with social media.
Yes. I've podcast has been in my mind for quite a while now. I benefited so much from podcasts. I don't know that I would have gotten the success that I've gotten already without podcasts. When I was a music teacher, I would you get a little tired of you're hearing music all day long, so you don't tend to turn on music when you get in your car after hearing music all day. And so I was listening to podcasts on the way to work, on the way home from work, every single day for years. Tim Ferriss was my favorite. I've listened to most of his episodes. But I gathered so much from that process. And I really do love exploring ideas with people. And also, I thought podcast might be one of the places where I could, retain the control, have those boundaries set to be able to continue doing things that I wanted to be doing. A podcast seems like something that if I find myself not enjoying it, I could morph it. I could say I want it to be this way. This is what we're gonna do, and I could, make it please me in the best sense of that phrase.
Yeah, and I'd agree. Podcasts have changed my life, since I discovered them, and it's also understanding that a lot of other platforms very much have got your attention for a short space of time. But when you are listening to platforms, you're usually doing one of three things. You're either in the car, so you have an undivided attention towards the road and to what you're listening. You're going for a walk, once again, an undivided attention to what it is that you're focused on. Or in the gym, most of the time when you're listening, you're focused on that. You're not being distracted by other podcasts and other notifications, which is why people absorb so much more information. And any kind of long form content like that, you can really, really delve a lot deeper and get your point across and explain more things in context. And it's something that you can't do, especially on TikTok. You've really got to you've got to grab the attention, explain the details, and do that in under 60 seconds, which for complex subjects is very difficult to do.
Yes, it's a great challenge, but also there are limitations. I forgot to mention, also, I would love to make tons and tons of money. Money's great. So you kind of got into this space, personal training and bodybuilding. Where are you at now?
So I've just really, this year, closed all of that down. My passion is helping fitness professionals now. I played, the online coach at a high level, and there are a lot of struggling fitness professionals out there that essentially need my help, especially during this pandemic period. And I made a decision that I can't spin. There's only so many plates that I can spin, and I genuinely have a massive passion now in helping those coaches really get more attention online, understand marketing, understand sales, and understand the mindset, what it takes to become a successful, online coach. So a lot of my energy now has been fully focused into helping fitness professionals scale and grow their businesses.
I think it's a natural progression that many people, not many, actually, very, very few, people that become a leader in their field eventually lead leaders. I think that makes sense to me. That seems like a good thing. I don't know if there's enough of those. I think they might be one of the rarest commodities.
I think one thing I've seen in this field is, well, firstly, it's very profitable because, of course, a lot of my products are focused on B2C, and now it's more B2B. So the ticket price of things is a lot more expensive because the results are more financial and people can see it as more of an investment because they see a return, as opposed to their bodies, which is more of an emotional investment and a game of patience in the hope that it works. And what you find with things like that is that you get a lot of people who are coaches, who haven't been coaches for very long, that suddenly decide to become a coach to the coaches. And they also do very well because they have that confidence. And the problem that you have with the internet, as you see now with TikTok, everyone's an expert and everyone says things with confidence. And that's usually backed up, unfortunately, sometimes by that social proof based on an audience. And it becomes more and more difficult to distinguish between who the real people are and, who the charlatans are. And it's fascinating because I see it in every industry. And there's no right or wrong time to do this. But I've just found it incredibly fascinating, suddenly coming down into this route and seeing it, and seeing people who have actually, have only been coaches for a short period of time, who are in the kind of same field helping people. And, at the end of the day, you've got to look at two things. They are helping people and they are getting results with others, but it's not something that I would have been confident myself in doing. Especially after just a couple of years of actually learning that craft and that trade. So it's just been a really fascinating insight into this kind of coaching the coaches world.
Yes, that I have mixed feelings about. Um, it's easy to pass it off and to say, oh, this is somebody that's, stepping into a place where they shouldn't be. There are probably noble ways to go about that and ignoble ways to go about that. The thing I think about is how well you can teach something that's really new and present to you, right? Like a discovery. Um, and at the same time, yes, I totally agree. There are lots of people that are not qualified, and they're teaching other people to do the thing that they couldn't manage to do, and they decided to just go this route instead. Um, I don't know. It's a very strange thing to sort through.
It is, and it's something that I've had conversations with people about because, you know, you, coming from a military background, we have, you've heard the phrase, you've got to earn your stripes. And, the great thing about the British Army is the fact that, you respect people in their positions because they've worked for many years to get there. There's no one that's just suddenly, in the space of a year or two, kind of overtaken you with that. And I think it's very different from the military to, being a civilian because there is no rank structure. Success can come in 2 years, it can come in 10, it could come never. And I think that's what also makes it so difficult because we're comparing ourselves all of the time to see where we currently are and whether we're doing well or not. Everyone's heard the quote, comparison is the thief of joy, and it certainly is to an extent, but I think it's important to use things such as envy in a positive way because it can help you or hinder you. And it's a very difficult thing because, there are, as you said, there are some people who have earned their stripes and some people who haven't. And I think only time will tell when it comes to that.
That's an interesting thing you said about envy. I've had the sensation a lot recently that a lot of these emotions that we see as negative can be utterly delightful. I remember I had kind of, stopped myself from ever speaking in anger or feeling anger, and, I'd really, like, shut that part of myself down. This is quite a few years ago, but I was working at a job where I'd gotten on a degree of responsibility, and someone had done something that very obviously it was a reasonable place to be angry. And I chose to let myself get angry. And obviously this can go way too far. This can be really bad. But in that moment, I just tapped into a little bit of it, and I spoke a bit more fiercely than I normally would have done because I'm normally pretty soft spoken. And it was so interesting how we both felt better. It was a surprising thing to me. Like I could very easily see that I would feel better. It's like, okay, I expressed my anger and getting it out and all that. But there was a sensation of us both falling into alignment. So I was angry for a reasonable reason, and then I said not to do something or something like that, and he immediately backed off, and you could tell he was, I'm not going to say the word pleased, but it was like I'd provided him with good information. Like, there was a clarity to what I had done, that it's like, I'm angry. I don't want you to do that, And it was seemed like a very satisfying experience, even on the receiving end, which is very interesting.
Back in 2016, when I was talking about me intellectualizing things, I'd had a couple of my employees leave, and one of the things that they said to us is that they never went to me with their problems because they never felt like, they were too embarrassed to talk about them because they didn't think that I struggled with anything because of what they saw and how I responded to things. So when they were feeling upset, when they were feeling that, imposter syndrome, when they were feeling, down about things and clients leaving them and stuff, they just didn't come to me with it because they just thought that it was just stupid. So me not embracing my feelings about things actually was hindering my business because I wasn't able to connect and help others. So that was a huge lesson which I learned.
What are the challenges in communicating with the people that you're trying to communicate now? What lessons are the hard lessons?
I think when it comes to working with clients, especially from a coaching coaches now, is that they're very much the people that have the answers. They do. The people come to them to get their problems solved. So they're not used to coming to somebody else to have their problems solved. So a lot of it from myself, coaching coaches, takes me having to firstly create things within my coaching for them to develop themselves, such as, a random example. We have a catch up on a Wednesday, and sometimes we go around people and it's kind of a bullshit show because people just tell us their wins, and to turn it on its head, it's like each one of you is going to share something you fucked up this week, and it's getting them to share their failures. And actually what happens with that process is people feel better. And it's very much like this when you look at Instagram and you feel bad and everyone looks great and smiling and happy, and you actually leave the platform feeling worse because you're like, oh, I'm not feeling good, and everybody else is feeling great. And it's not until you realize that, no, actually that's just what people want you to see, that actually you start to feel better. And there is a limit to that as well, because of course we don't want people wallowing in their own self-pity all the time. So it's getting the balance right. But I think me having to create these challenges for people to really embrace these things is so important, rather than just assuming that people are going to do it. Forcing them to do it has definitely helped.
That's beautiful. I think there's a story of Sarah Blakely, the founder of the billion-dollar company Spanx. I think there's a story of that her father would make it a habit for everyone around the dinner table to say something that they had failed at that day. And if they didn't have anything to report, he would be disappointed. Which is just, it's very cute, way of, explaining that idea. And so powerful. And you're right, it's like a spectrum where you can go too far on either side, I think. Too much, I don't know if I want to say too much success. Constant success it would shape your worldview in ways that were very misleading. And then on the other side, I talk a lot about this with failure, because I completely agree. I love the way you described talking about failure. I have a bit of a pet peeve with some of the motivational stuff that I see around failure, where it's like, oh, failure's the best, it's awesome, gotta fail, because of the other end of the spectrum, which is something I've thought about, is if all of your data points are failure, then you have no reference point. And the reason why failure is useful is to light the way, right? It's like you have a failure, and okay, that's what I don't do. Now we go towards this other thing. Great. And there are some people, and it's of course can be argued whether it's true or not, but there are some people that in their experience, they only have seen failure. And that's the way their experience is shaped. And for that person, I think failure is utterly debilitating. I think it's an incredibly destructive force. And I don't think this is talked enough about. And I don't know, maybe it's survivorship bias of the people who have succeeded. I'm not sure, but I think there's something to this where if you are in that sort of scenario where you only have failure data points, I think that it's not necessarily a reframing of the failure. It's you need to either, well, maybe reframe one of them as a success, or spot a success, or even manufacture a success in order to compare the failures to something in order to navigate to move forwards. What do you think about that?
So one thing that I carry on, especially one thing I found, I love marketing. Okay, so I love, we do campaigns for our launches and everything else like that. And the most important thing for me is an after action review. It's a simple 3-step process. What went right, what went wrong, and what can we improve the next time that we do it. And I think everything that you do needs to be looked at like that, even when something did work, because there is always lessons to be learned from the things that go right. There's always lessons to be learned, the things that went wrong. And just because something went right this time doesn't mean it doesn't need to be improved next time. And then what that enables you to do is kind of humble yourself, because when we are getting a constant string of success, we can let it get to our head. Ego takes over, and this is where we get a nasty shock. And I think a random example of this can be actually TikTok. We can produce a couple of videos, suddenly get hundreds of thousands of views, and think we've cracked it now. We finally, after months of doing this TikTok game, we've finally figured it out. And then it humbles you like anything. And it's a great thing, because then it allows you to kind of look at things about, okay, cool. So that's got 100,000 views. That's got this, whatever. What went right with that? What did I do that was correct with that? What didn't I do correct, and what could be improved? Because sometimes actually one thing I found with YouTube specifically is just because you're getting success with something doesn't mean it doesn't need to be improved. There are a lot of YouTubers whose success is based on pulling others down, because people love drama. And they ride this wave of getting the subscribers, the views and attention. And although it's positive for their bank balance and their views, it's negative for their mental health. And it's amazing, some of these young YouTubers that I've seen who have suddenly got millions of followers over a 6-month period to suddenly turn around and not produce videos for 6 months and say, I'm sorry, I needed a break, this was killing me. And that also, kind of adds to that after action review of actually, kind of really understand why things are working as well, and don't let it get to your head.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about dealing with success, dealing with wealth? I think, what you described of the person that, say, makes negative YouTube videos, and then there comes a point where that doesn't work anymore. I think there's a point where let's call it the game changes, or the rules of the game change a little bit, and somebody that has maybe utilized one strategy, life strategy, to get success, once they have success, that strategy is no longer tenable, because it's based on I'm not going to say this right, but the principles of the needed success. So my idea behind that is, for example, survival is a very strong drive, right? And let's call it a financial survival, because we've sort of tied those in our minds. So somebody that wants the initial financial success, they'll tell themselves, I want to make millions and millions of dollars, but they have a certain point in their mind that they're like, this is actually what I need. I need to get to this, and it's a much lower number. And what they'll do is that they'll push and push and push, and they'll punish themselves, and they'll fight and scratch to get to that number, and then suddenly they'll just stop. And the way I've been running into this with my clients, I have a good number of clients that are at this point where they've hit a certain level of success, and now they're like, well, I don't, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. What's going on? And I think it's because it's something along the lines of, you're doing something that no longer hits your reward systems, because it's like if you're gonna punish yourself to go past the thing that you need, well, the reason why you're trying to go past the thing that you need is to get a better life, and punishing yourself doesn't get you a better life. So it's like this weird zero-sum game that makes the brain say, well, why would I do anything? And that's just something I've been seeing a lot in different ways. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts to speak to that.
There's this process called the 5 whys. Have you heard of it?
I think so. Could you lay it out?
So let's say, for example, a client comes to me, business client says, I want to earn $100,000 a month. And I'm like, that's cool. Why? Because I want to be financially successful. Yeah, but why? Because I want a feeling of security for my family. Why? Because I've struggled with money in the past and I don't want to feel like that again. Why? Because I made some poor decisions in life and I don't want to go down that route again. Why? And you see where we're going with this. Like, what someone has actually said to me that they want to earn $100,000 a month is actually because they didn't feel worthy of success. They didn't feel that they deserved it. And that thing which they've put it on now is going to say to them that that is not true. And most of the things that a lot of people do is primarily based on validation from others. And actually they've hit those numbers, and what that says to them is that they're good enough. And really understanding something that I actually said this morning on Instagram. And a lot of people look at gratitude as something that's kind of woo-woo, hippie kind of stuff. But actually practicing gratitude on a daily basis, probably it says to you, look, when you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, most people in the world have our basic needs met. We pretty much have everything that we need already. So why are we searching for all these other things? What's the point? And that always interests me, because when I was younger, it was all about, bought a nice car, nice material items. And the older that I get, the less I give a fuck about those things. I don't care. I couldn't care less. I care more about the time and people and connections and doing things that I enjoy doing. So I just find it very fascinating that, a lot of the stuff that people do, really deep down, it's for the approval of other people's the approval of other people who don't actually matter, and the approval for themselves. It's kind of a tick in the box to let them know that they're doing a good job, or they're good enough, or they deserve it. When in actual fact, what they can do is change that process to say, well, yeah, I pretty much have everything I already need, but anything else is a bonus. And actually what that enables you to do is create real work, to enjoy what it is that you're doing, to not get caught up in things if they don't work out, if they fuck up and fail, if everything goes to zero again, because you enjoy what it is that you're doing, not the outcome. And just that shift in mindset for myself has enabled me to create better work. It's enabled me to be more persistent and patient. Because once you achieve what it is that you achieve, hit that money goal, hit that subscriber goal, you're only going to be looking for something else to do because you've got another 40, 50, 60 years on the planet. And you're going to continue to look towards things. Very interesting. One of my favorite books, I don't know if you've heard of it, Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz.
I like the
that
title.
very much. It very much delves in. He was basically a cosmetic surgeon, and he was fascinated because he would have people that come to him who wanted nose jobs, who wanted alterations on their face, and some people when they had it, it changed their life for good. That was the one thing that they were not confident about. And that simple change made them feel better. And then he had other clients that no matter what they did to them, they were never satisfied. They always wanted the next thing. And he came up with these success and failure principles, which talk about confidence, self-esteem, self-worth. And of course, I didn't actually know what psycho-cybernetics meant until I was actually on holiday in Greece. And someone pointed out and said, oh, what does that mean? And I think what they were talking about is a ship trying to find its destination. And it was very fascinating because they pointed out, because cybernetics, I believe, I can't remember, but it was talking about a destination and a journey. And something that I'll always remember in the book is Maxwell Maltz comparing to people like bicycles. And what he said is that when a bicycle is stable, it's very wobbly and unbalanced, but when it has momentum, it's easy to steer. And in our lives, we're constantly searching for momentum so we can have the balance and control and the drive towards the destination. So when you understand that life's like that, then it's just about always finding that mountain to climb and aiming towards things and always having a goal. Once you climb up the mountain, the reason that people get depressed is because they've climbed it and they have to walk back down. When in actual fact, what life's about is climbing up the mountain, looking at the view at the top, so you can get a good view on the next mountain to climb. So when you do walk down, you're excited for the next journey, because there's a long journey before it all finishes.
May I ask you a selfish nuts and bolts question?
Sure.
I am committed to improving my posture this year. This has been a consistent dilemma for me. Really, really shortened pecs. I've been hunched for years. Done a lot of work, but I'd love to hear your quick ideas on favorite hacks in that area.
It's understanding how to, I always use visual cues. So when someone needs to improve their posture, especially when it comes to chest development, what they need to understand is that most people there are not used to having scapular retraction. So basically putting their shoulder blades back in their pockets so they can engage their chest more to work. Most people, when I see that lack chest development, they also have huge shoulders, and the shoulders do most of the work. So the visual cue that I usually get people is to say, and you might even want to practice this as well, is to get a golf ball and put it between your shoulder blades at the back and get used to holding it there. And then kind of during the day, visually think to yourself about that golf ball and the need for your shoulder blades to hold it there. And actually having those visual cues based on that will firstly teach you more about scapular retraction, Secondly, teach you about the right posture in which you need to have. And thirdly, being able to, when if you are training and improving that muscle, to hold that position and then focus on movement with the with the chest over those shoulders.
I will work on that. Thank you. You and I also, I think, have another common ground of something we appreciate. And you mentioned it to a degree with your swims, which is because you're in the UK, right? Am I right? Okay, yeah. It should be pretty chilly up there. Cold exposure.
Very. Yes.
What's your take on it?
So, 2 years ago, I'd always wanted to do because I live by the sea, and over the years I've seen some crazy people jumping in the sea, and I'm just like, I'd always wanted to do that. So I made a commitment to start with cold showers. I did them in 2018. I committed for 30 days to do it. What I learned is every day I didn't want to do it. I anticipated it. I did it, and I felt great afterwards. So firstly, it taught me discipline. Doing things that you don't want to do is so important. And consistency. The first, I think, 12 cold showers on day 12 felt exactly the same. No change, not feeling good.
Yeah.
Day 14 to 16 changed a little bit. They became less uncomfortable. They became, 16, 17, 18 days in, I could actually do a minute. And actually, there was a period of time where I could actually do a cold shower without needing to switch it to hot. And kind of what solidified the process was day 29. I went swimming, and just about to get a shower before going into the pool. And a guy turned around and said, "You don't want to go into those showers. They're freezing cold." And I smiled at him, put it on, and had, walked under there without even having it take my breath away. And of course, he didn't know that I was on day 29 of a cold shower challenge. He looked at me like I was a sociopath or something, walking into there. But that kind of solidified that actually, it adds to the quote, what you practice in private, you're rewarded for in public. Because actually, when you commit to doing the hard stuff, when no one's looking, you kind of get rewarded in it. It's just like, wow, he was probably like, oh my God, that guy's a freak. What's going on there? But at the same time, when you do the hard work, as in you work on yourself, you improve your health, and once again, your self-esteem and your confidence comes in. That's displayed in public. When somebody gets angry with you and you're patient and you don't respond the way that they want you to respond. And we always see this when someone is the happiest person in the room, it makes everybody else glow. And a lot of that, what people don't see is that person's had to work very hard and discipline themselves to get better and improve that. And actually, no, it's not about them, it's about others. But we're coming away from the whole cold shower thing now. And I have a tendency of rabbit holing down.
Oh.
So from cold showers to the sea, it was crazy. The first one was the coldest time in the UK. It was March 2018, and it was freezing, but I felt great. And I always remember there's these two guys in Ireland, and it's even colder over there. And I always remember a quote, and he said, "The man that goes in the sea is very different to the man that comes out." And what I love about that is that I always hate, I've been going in every day for the last 15 months. And there are 6 out of 7 days where I always remind myself of that. Because you feel totally different walking out with a smile on your face than you do going in going, why the hell am I doing this? And you can learn a lot from other things. No one really enjoys going to the gym and exercising, but they feel great once they've done it. No one really enjoys going in the sea, but you feel great once you've done it. And it leads you to realize that, quote that old term, hard things, easy life, easy things, hard life. Choose the hard, difficult things and your life gets easier. If you avoid the difficult things, your life tends to get more difficult. And that's really what cold has taught me, is to get over that feeling. And actually, it's understanding that you need to get attached to the feeling afterwards, not the feeling before. And that's where really an understanding of discipline has come.
Yes, I'm firmly convinced of cold exposure. I have gotten so many benefits from it. It's been incredible. And an interesting element of it is you can get benefits from cold exposure at almost any, let's call it, level of expertise. When I talk to people that are considering it or whatever, we tend to think of activities as rather binary, and you can gain benefit from turning the shower to cold for 1 second on your arm and turning it back. If you're somebody with a very, very low tolerance and you're really struggling, right? Because some people, it's so, cold is a very hard one for me, actually. It's been a long journey. I did a lot of partial body stuff to get started. But you can gain benefit from something as simple as 1 second of cold on your arm, which is amazing. And I think for some people that's probably a good idea, because some people are very let me say this first. My idea on what cold exposure is to me is the sensation of cold to me is, I believe, a warning sign that danger may be approaching. It's you might die. To me, that's what I see the sensation of cold as, and that's a very real sensation. Like, that's and it's accurate too, because we have died from cold many times, and to voluntarily step into that space, and then come out unharmed, I think has some effect of making you believe you are the person who can handle it. And I don't mean handle the cold. I just mean capital IT, handle it, handle life, whatever. I think there's a fundamental thing there that happens. And that's why I said, even for somebody that's really struggling with it, even a second on your arm, it's this voluntary discomfort that sends that signal to your brain, and then you go back to warm, the whole rest of your shower if you want, if that's all that works for you. Your brain does a little bit of math and says, "Oh, you're stronger than you thought."
I've lived a lot of my life by pushing the boundaries of that with what I've done with my charity events and other things. January 2019, it was New Year's Eve, and I went to sleep early. One of the main reasons I went to sleep early, it was the 1st of January 2000. It was December 2018. And the reason being is that 2019 was going to be, without a doubt, one of the most difficult years ever. I was splitting from my business partners. I was closing down my business. My son was due in May, and I was about to literally start again with everything. So the 4 a.m., 1st of Jan, I got up without any training. I ran a marathon. It took about 5 hours and 20 minutes. The 2nd of Jan, I got up at 4 a.m. and ran another marathon. The 3rd of Jan, I ran 17 miles, and I stopped because I had such bad blisters on my feet and I could barely walk. And I kind of turned around and go, that'll do. And I never told anyone why I did it. I put up my updates, and people were like, you're mad, why are you doing that? And I didn't actually say why. And one of the main reasons being was that I realized that if I can get up and do that, it was 69 miles in 3 days without training, and I can deal with that pain that took to do. I can pretty much deal with the rest of the year and anything that the year throws at me. And kind of taking that back to cold exposure, I think a lot of people associate cold exposure with mental health benefits. And I think when you expose yourself to something that is painful and you find out that you're okay afterwards, it kind of says to you that you're going to be fine. Anything that life throws at you, you're going to have a period of discomfort. You're going to hate doing it, but it will finish. There will be an end to this, and it will get better. And there is different levels of extreme of that, from just putting a little bit of cold water on your arm to running 69 miles in 3 days. And depending on your level of, exposure to that, you always test the boat. But I have found that, that has personally helped me when I've put myself in these kind of situations and come out on the other side okay and realize that I didn't die, I was fine. And then you kind of realize that really you actually understand just how much your body can deal with things, because it's an amazing thing.
Yes, it is amazing. I think however you prove that, and however you train that in is it's an incredible service to yourself. It's a valuable thing to do. I think that's a fantastic place to come to a close. Where would you like to send folks?
I think probably the best place is either TikTok or Instagram at @Alderton. As I said, my focus with TikTok is to really focus on the mindset stuff, and really expand on that, add to my passion of sea dips, and really kind of share the lessons that I've learned with that along the way. And if you are, of course, a fitness professional and you're looking to scale and grow your business, highly recommend heading over to Instagram, same at @Alderton.
Well, this has been phenomenal, Jay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.